The silver cup arrived last. Serena Vale watched the servant place it 2 steps below the royal dais, beside the smaller chair reserved for widowed aunts, disgraced cousins, and foreign hostages who had not yet learned the court language. The cup was polished. The insult was cleaner. Around her, the glass hall of Verathorn glittered under moonlit chandeliers. Crystal chains hung from the ceiling in long frozen rivers. Noble families stood in velvet ranks beneath the windows, their scent jewels glowing at their throats. Every important witness in the high court had gathered for the moon-binding anniversary feast. Tonight, Prince Carrick was supposed to renew his bond before them. Tonight, he was supposed to take Serena's hand, press the royal signet to her wrist, and speak the vow that had made her his lawful wife 7 years ago. Serena had not expected tenderness. That hope had died by patient inches. She had expected duty. That was the saddest part. A soft weight shifted beneath her dark green sleeve. Nettlewing, her small green dragon, poked his narrow head from the hidden pocket sewn against her ribs. His scales shone the color of wet moss. His little horns curled backward like polished thorns. His gold eyes fixed on the silver cup with personal hatred. Serena pressed one finger gently against his snout. He opened his mouth and let a tiny thread of smoke curl over her knuckle. The nearby court ladies leaned away. One of them lifted a lace fan. Another pretended not to laugh. They thought the dragon was ridiculous. They saw a spoiled pet with greedy claws and a habit of stealing buttons. They did not know he had been born from the old green scent witness line kept in the palace conservatory. They did not know Serena had saved him as a sick hatchling the same night Carrick had once saved her. Nettlewing had grown from that frightened scrap into the only witness who never learned court manners. The main doors opened. Every whisper in the hall sharpened. Prince Carrick entered in white court silk, his blonde hair loose over a collar of moon pearls. He had the same beautiful face that had once turned toward Serena in the old dragon conservatory, bruised and defiant, while guards searched for the orphan girl accused of breaking a ritual cup. He had lied for her then. He had taken punishment meant for her. He had pressed a bronze dragon scale clasp into her palm and told her to keep it until he became brave enough to deserve it. For years, Serena had loved that boy more than the man before her. That mistake had become a marriage. Lady Morelle Ostra walked beside him. She wore silver vines embroidered across white gold silk. The pattern was not similar to Serena's old binding gown. It was a copy. Each leaf curled in the same shape. Each thread caught the light in the same way. Morelle had not borrowed the design by accident. She had stolen a memory and worn it as a victory. Her hand rested on Carrick's sleeve. Carrick allowed it. The court understood the gesture before any herald spoke. Serena's throat tightened. The old crown bond mark beneath her collar warmed, then cooled, then warmed again. It had done that for months whenever Carrick moved too close to another woman. He always blamed the curse. He said the old royal line confused his heart. He said his mind reached toward Serena, but his body could not follow. Serena had believed him longer than dignity allowed because the curse was real. Every royal man in Verathorn feared it. After adulthood, the curse bent recognition, tangled desire, and punished selfish love. Yet the oldest witch law said something the palace preferred to forget. The curse confused the heart. It did not erase choice. Morelle tilted her head and smiled down from the higher step. The smile was soft enough for court, sharp enough for Serena. Carrick did not come to the lower step. He did not extend his hand. He did not ask why Serena had been given the lesser cup. He turned toward the witnesses and spoke of patience. He called Serena loyal. He called himself wounded by old magic. He made her endurance sound like evidence of his suffering instead of evidence of her humiliation. Patience. Serena tasted the word like ash. Carrick looked noble while using her pain as decoration. He always did. The curse gave him the posture of tragedy. The court gave him sympathy. Serena gave him forgiveness. Morelle lowered her lashes and spoke of women born for endurance. A few nobles laughed too quietly. Nettlewing's claws sank through Serena's sleeve. King Arvith sat above them all on the black fur throne. He had not moved since the doors opened. He wore midnight court armor beneath a long formal coat. His black hair fell in controlled waves around a face too still for comfort. His eyes were dark silver, deep-set, and unreadable. The court feared his silence more than most men's rage. Serena did not look at him for long. She never did. For years, she had felt his gaze at the edges of courtrooms, gardens, and judgment halls. He always looked away when she turned. When he did hold her eyes, his stare felt cold enough to cut through cloth. She had decided long ago that he despised her. Perhaps he thought her weak. Perhaps he hated watching a Charity Ward sit so near the royal family. Tonight, he looked at Carrick's hand on Morel's waist. Then he looked at Serena's silver cup. Something moved in his jaw. Carrick began the public blessing, without her beside him. The court priest lifted the moon basin. Every anniversary rite required husband and wife to drink from twin chalices. Tonight, Carrick drank first from the bound prince's cup. Morel lifted the second cup before any servant could stop her. Serena heard the room inhale. Morel's fingers curled around the cup meant for a lawful wife. Carrick glanced at Serena. His expression held apology for the court and warning for her. The curse, that look said. Do not make this harder. Serena's hand closed over the bronze dragon scale clasp hidden at her throat. She had worn it beneath every gown since girlhood. It had been the proof that Carrick had once been brave. Nettlewing crawled out of her sleeve. Serena caught him too late. The little dragon dropped onto the banquet table with a thud that rattled crystal knives. Courtiers gasped as he marched past sugared pears, moon cakes, roast quail, and silver salt dishes. His tail whipped behind him like a green lash. Morel froze with the cup near her mouth. Nettlewing sniffed the silver vine embroidery on her napkin. His scales lifted. A bright green flame puffed from his mouth and burned one perfect vine leaf into black dust. Several nobles laughed. Others stepped back. Someone whispered that the dragon had chosen sides. The whisper spread faster than perfume. Morel did not fear the dragon yet. Ostra lawyers had assured her that a green dragon's anger meant nothing unless court law ordered controlled flame. A pet's temper could be called jealousy. A burned napkin could be called bad training. A rival lady could still smile. Morel set down the cup with trembling grace and said she had been frightened. Carrick's face tightened. He spoke Serena's name as if she had thrown the flame herself. Serena crossed the hall and scooped Nettlewing from the table. The dragon had stolen a pearl button from Carrick's sleeve during the march. It was already clenched between his teeth. Serena pried it free before anyone noticed. She apologized for the dragon because an apology cost less than begging would have. It still cost too much. Carrick stepped down at last, close enough for the court to see a husband correcting a difficult wife. He told her to control Nettlewing. He said fear made people cruel. Morel had stolen Serena's cup, copied her binding dress, and leaned against her husband under 100 noble eyes. Still, Serena was the one being asked to comfort the room. She looked up at Carrick. For one weak moment, she saw the boy from the Dragon Conservatory. The boy with dust on his cheek. The boy who had placed a bronze clasp in her hand and smiled through a split lip. Then the man before her touched the side of Morel's chair, as if he had a right to both women's pain. The memory cracked. Not enough to break. Not yet. Carrick had counted on 3 things: Serena's old loyalty, the court's habit of pitying cursed princes, and Arvitha's refusal to touch a bond that was not his. He had counted well. For 7 years, Serena had let the court mistake her restraint for obedience. She had let Carrick leave petitions, dowry accounts, household disputes, and bond notices on her desk because he found them dull. He had mistaken her labor for wifely softness. He had not understood that quiet work could become a map through his lies. The feast dragged on under music, moonlight, and careful cruelty. Morel let servants refill her cup twice. Each time, she lifted it with the solemn grace of a woman already practicing for another title. Carrick spoke to Serena only when witnesses looked. The court priest avoided Serena's eyes. The ladies closest to Morel began calling her the prince's comfort in voices designed to travel. Nettlewing sat inside Serena's sleeve and vibrated with rage. When the second course ended, Morel rose and left through the side arch. Carrick followed after 3 measured breaths. Serena waited until the hall resumed its practiced noise. Then she slipped away behind a row of marble pillars and entered the old sun gallery. The gallery had been built for winter queens. Golden glass covered one side. Moonlight turned the empty space pale and cold. Dried orange trees stood in silver tubs. The scent of old citrus clung faintly to the air. Carrick and Morel stood near the far windows. Serena stopped behind a carved screen. Morel laughed first. The sound carried. She mocked Serena's devotion. She said Serena still looked at Carrick as if he were sick. She said that kind of loyalty was almost useful. Carrick sighed and told her not to mock too loudly. Morel asked whether the curse had suddenly remembered guilt. He answered that it remembered enough. Serena's breath stopped. Carrick lowered his voice, but the gallery glass threw sound strangely. Restoration drafts had returned pieces of memory. Not all, he said. Enough. Morel stepped closer. Enough to know Serena believed he was lost. Enough to know she forgave everything because she was still chasing the dirty little boy who hid her in the dragon house. The old memory struck Serena harder than any insult at the feast. Nettlewing went utterly still against her ribs. Carrick said Serena was easier when she had something noble to forgive. Morel reminded him that her family's resin kept his black mark hidden. Without her, the court might learn he was not a helpless cursed prince, but a man choosing cowardice. Carrick warned her that the resin must hold through trial season. Morel told him it would hold if he kept her close, and not just behind locked doors. She wanted recognition. She wanted public elevation. She wanted the court to see Serena placed below her. Then Morel mentioned Arvith. She said the king watched Serena as if self-control were a religion. Carrick denied it too quickly. Morel laughed. Carrick answered with bitterness. His brother would not touch what belonged to him. Belonged. The last thread broke. Serena stepped from behind the carved screen. Neither of them moved at first. Carrick's face changed faster than Morel's. Surprise came first. Then fear. Then the old, polished sorrow he wore in public. Morel recovered quickly and accused Serena of hiding, listening, and losing control of her creature. Serena did not answer Morel. Her fingers went to the bronze dragon scale clasp at her throat. She unfastened it carefully. The little clasp sat in her palm, warm from years against her skin. She told Carrick he had given it to her so she could remind him if he became cruel. Carrick looked at the clasp. For the first time that night, shame touched his face. It might have moved Serena once. Now it only made her colder. She wrapped the bronze clasp around the thin pledge chain that still hung from her neck. The chain had been placed there on her binding day, before the court, before the moon basin, before she knew childhood loyalty could become adult humiliation. She pulled. The clasp snapped free. The chain tore from her throat with a bright metallic sting. Carrick reached for her and told her not to do something foolish. Serena struck him across the face with the broken pledge chain. The sound cracked through the sun gallery. Carrick staggered one step. A red line rose across his cheek, shallow but visible. A prince had been struck by his bound wife under palace glass. Morel screamed. Nettlewing launched himself at her jeweled hairpiece. He did not touch her skin. He bit through the gold cage holding her false scent charm, shook it like a rat, and spat green sparks into the hidden vial. The charm burst with a bitter resin smell. Morel stumbled backward, lost her footing, and fell into the indoor fountain with a crash of silk and water. The little dragon landed on the fountain rim and looked pleased with himself. For 3 heartbeats, Serena felt free. Then Carrick touched his cheek. His eyes changed. Not cursed. Not confused. Calculating. He told her she had struck a prince. The gallery doors opened. 2 servants froze. A guard appeared behind them. Morel sobbed in the fountain, clutching scorched jewels and ruined silk. Serena looked at the broken chain in her hand. Then she looked at Nettlewing. She called him, and the dragon leapt to her shoulder. She ran. She did not run empty. She carried the broken pledge chain, the burned scent charm caught in Nettlewing's teeth, and the knowledge that Carrick had lied with memory intact. Behind her, Carrick shouted for guards. Serena cut through the old servant cloister, down the spice stairs, past the shut dairy court, and into the moon gate passage. Her breath burned. The crown bond mark at her throat pulsed with angry heat. Nettlewing clung to her collar, growling at every footstep behind them. She knew the law. Crown assault procedure would begin before dawn. Carrick could claim instability. Morel could claim terror. The court could order Nettlewing confined as a dangerous familiar. Serena could be locked away until her side of the story became gossip instead of evidence. She reached the moon gate and found it closed. A man stood before it. King Arvith filled the archway in black. Serena stopped so abruptly that Nettlewing slid down her arm and clawed back up with an offended chirp. The king's eyes dropped to the torn mark at her throat, then to the broken chain, then to the bitter smoke curling from the charm in Nettlewing's mouth. Serena lifted her chin and told him to arrest her where witnesses could see. Arvith moved before she could step back. His hand closed around her wrist. He pulled her into the shadow beside an iron saint statue. His other hand came behind her, not gripping, only cushioning the stone at her back so she did not strike it. She opened her mouth to protest. He lifted his free hand, not touching her lips, only warning silence. Boots thundered past. Carrick's private Moonbadge guards crossed the Moon Gate passage at a run. One carried a restraint chain. Another held a dragon hook. Serena saw the hook and felt Nettlewing tremble. Arvith shifted half an inch, blocking her view. The men passed without looking behind the statue. Serena's wrist remained in his hand. His grip was controlled. Too controlled. His thumb rested near the place where her pulse hammered, yet he did not press. His body stood close enough to hide her. Close enough that she felt the heat of him through court armor and damp silk. Nettlewing leaned from her shoulder and bit the edge of Arvith's sleeve. The king did not flinch. When the corridor emptied, Serena pulled against him. Arvith released her at once. That startled her more than his grip had. He told her she was in danger from his brother, his court favorite, her family, and any courtier who thought delivering her would earn gratitude before trial. The words were quiet. They landed like stones. Serena kept the broken chain wrapped around her hand. Arvith explained that he could not publicly defend her that night. She was still legally bound to Carrick. Any open protection from him could be used against her. Carrick would claim she struck him because the king had promised to steal her. Morel would swear it. Half the court would enjoy believing it. Until Serena challenged the bond herself, any royal inquiry from Arvith would make her evidence look like a king's desire dressed as law. Serena hated that she understood. She asked what he wanted. Arvith said he wanted to keep her present and protected until the 7th night. Nettlewing growled. Arvith looked at the dragon and added that this included him. Nettlewing stopped growling and narrowed his eyes, as if considering the offer. Serena glanced toward the passage. She asked why she should trust him. Arvith answered that she should not. She should trust paper, locks, and witnesses when they had them. Until then, she should trust that Carrick had sent men with a dragon hook before he sent a physician. Serena's fingers tightened around the broken chain. Arvith turned and pressed his signet into a seam in the stone wall. A narrow door opened behind the saint statue. A hidden passage breathed cold air into the corridor. He told her to come now and hate him after she was harder to silence. She should have refused. Instead, she entered. The passage led beneath the palace, through old king tunnels lined with black fir roots preserved in silver mortar. Arvith walked ahead with a lantern. He did not crowd her. He did not ask for the burned charm. He did not ask what she had heard. That restraint felt more dangerous than questions. Nettlewing climbed down Serena's sleeve, scampered along the tunnel wall, and stole a silver nail from an old warning plaque. Arvith noticed and remarked that her dragon stole royal property. Serena said he considered it emotional tax. The king's mouth almost moved. Almost. By the time they reached the Thorn Vault wing, the palace bells had begun to ring. Crown assault alarm. 3 measured strikes. Then 3 more. Then 7. Serena knew what 7 meant. A royal person case had been opened. The Thorn Vault wing stood on the northern side of the palace, separated from the court by a covered bridge and ironwood doors. No one entered without the king's scent seal. Above the main hearth, an old witch mark had been carved into black stone, almost hidden beneath years of smoke. No gossiping ladies. No curious priests. No smiling court rivals wearing stolen embroidery. Arvith led Serena into a suite of dark-paneled rooms with a fire burning low and clean linen folded on a bench. A tray of water, bread, and plain fruit waited on a side table, as if someone had prepared for a wounded animal instead of a disgraced wife. Serena did not sit. Arvith removed a key from his coat and placed it on the table. The chamber now opened only to her palm scent. He set down a folded document forbidding guards, priests, handlers, or royal officers from touching Nettlewing while the dragon remained under his roof. Nettlewing hopped onto the table and put one claw on the document. Arvith added a leather purse beside it, gold for travel. Then he placed 2 more papers down. One set held Northern Passage documents through the Frostgate border. Another held lawful temporary identity papers if Serena chose to leave before trial. Her throat went dry. She asked whether he was helping her flee. He said he was giving her a second exit. The first was trial. Crown assault cases involving crown bonds had to be judged on the 7th night beneath the full moon. If Serena failed to appear, Carrick could request an automatic bond-faithless judgment. He could seize her dowry property, revoke Nettlewing's protection status, and ask the court to confine her under his authority. Serena's hand went to Nettlewing. The dragon pressed his warm body against her palm. Arvith saw the movement. He said if she stood trial and lost, she might need to disappear before judgment closed. These papers were for that. Serena noticed how quickly he had prepared them. Arvith admitted that some were prepared after Astra agents tried to open her household ledgers 2 months earlier. He had known then that Morel's family was circling her property, but without Serena's own petition or a visible breach of the bond, he could not intervene without damaging her. Serena looked up. His gaze held hers for one breath too long. Then he looked away. Old anger rose. She told him he had watched. He admitted it. She told him he had done nothing. A pause followed. When he spoke again, the restraint in his voice was sharper than coldness. He had blocked petitions to reduce her household funds. He had kept her mother's dowry box from being folded into Carrick's gaming debts. He had ordered the sent ledgers sealed when Astra agents asked to review them. He had not told her because any visible aid from him would have made her less safe. Serena hated each sentence. Not because it sounded false. Because it made years of his cold glances rearrange themselves into something worse than contempt. Something like distance chosen under pressure. She said he could have spoken to her. Arvith answered that she had been his brother's wife. Serena answered that she had also been a person. That landed. Arvith looked at her then, fully and without the old dodge. He said yes. She had been. The fire cracked. Nettlewing climbed across the table, dragged the travel purse closer to Serena, and sat on it like a banker. A broken laugh escaped her. Arvith looked at the dragon and said he negotiated fast. Serena said he judged character faster. Arvith noted that the dragon had bitten him. Serena said he started gently. This time the king's mouth did move. It was not a smile. It was the controlled ghost of one. Somehow that felt more intimate than warmth. Serena slept badly. The chamber lock recognized her hand as promised. No guards entered. No chains appeared. Nettlewing slept curled against her collarbone, waking every hour to hiss at the door as if planning a personal war against hinges. At dawn, the city bells announced the official version. Serena Vale had struck Prince Carrick during a private royal gathering. Her dragon had endangered Lady Morel Astra. The king had ordered a search. The accused remained at large. Serena stood by the window and watched guards ride through the lower court below. They carried royal banners and restraint hooks. The city would believe she was being hunted. Carrick would believe Arvith had not openly chosen sides. Morel would believe she still controlled the story. Arvith had made the lie serve Serena. That did not make him safe. It made him dangerous in a different way. A knock sounded 3 times. Measured. Not demanding. Serena opened the door because the room would not open without her palm anyway. Arvith stood outside with an older woman in gray archive robes. He did not cross the threshold. The woman's name was Master Eloan, keeper of private bond records. She bowed slightly and said she was not there to comfort Serena. She was there to make their lies expensive. Nettlewing chirped approval. Serena stepped aside. Eloan entered with a satchel of old keys, tablets, and a face built for surviving courts. Only after Arvith left did she explain why she had come so quickly. As a junior clerk, she had once watched another bound wife lose her name to a curse excuse while older officials told her silence was safer. She had spent 20 years waiting for a case clean enough to reopen the old law. Serena looked at the woman differently after that. Eloan was not a tool sent by the king. She was an old debt walking upright. The next 2 days became paper, scent, ash, and anger. Serena refused to sit while others assembled her defense. Eloan taught her the structure of the trial of true scent. Every claim required 3 supports: object, witness, and old law. Dragon reaction could begin inquiry, but never end judgment. That rule mattered. If Nettlewing burned the wrong thing without legal permission, Carrick could demand his confinement. Serena wrote that down. She wrote everything down. For years, Carrick had left household petitions, dowry accounts, and bond notices on Serena's desk because he found them dull. He had mistaken her labor for obedience. Now the same quiet work gave her a map through his lies. She recognized archive codes. She knew which steward marks meant private delivery. She knew how Astra seals differed from royal seals by the shape of one tiny thorn at the edge. Eloan saw that knowledge and stopped treating Serena like a client. By noon, she treated her like a colleague with shaking hands. The first useful clue came from Morel's prayer beads. Nettlewing found them by accident, or by dragon logic, which was the same thing with more biting. Arvitha's discreet agents retrieved items from the Sun Gallery before Carrick's men could clean it fully. Among them were the scorched remains of Morel's hairpiece, scraps of silver vine silk, and several beads that had scattered under the fountain edge. Nettlewing sniffed one bead, sneezed green sparks, and fell backward into a stack of legal papers. Serena caught him before he set the table on fire. Eloin examined the bead under a scent lamp. Bitter yellow vapor rose from a crack in the enamel. Cursed resin, blended with false mate scent. Serena's stomach turned. Arvith stood near the far wall, arms folded, silent enough to seem carved there. Morel had not simply drawn Carrick away. She had helped manufacture a magical excuse. Serena asked whether it could be traced. Eloin looked pleased. Everything expensive could be traced. Nettlewing tried to bite the bead again. Serena held him back and told him he had already found it. He glared at her with the outrage of an underpaid official. The second clue came from the scent ledgers. Carrick had ordered memory restoration drafts months earlier through a private physician. The drafts were used when the curse clouded royal recognition. They could restore emotional memory in fragments. They were costly, risky, and carefully recorded. The records proved that Carrick had recovered enough to remember. Not everything. Enough. Enough to know Serena's loyalty came from childhood. Enough to know the curse was not total darkness. Enough to know he had chosen the comfort of being forgiven. Serena read the ledger 3 times. Each time, grief became smaller and cleaner. By the 4th reading, it became evidence. That afternoon, a young cupbearer named Leora was brought quietly to the Thorn Vault wing. She had placed the lower cup at Serena's chair under orders from Morel's steward. She was thin, freckled, and so frightened that she kept folding her apron until the fabric wrinkled into ropes. At first, she said she remembered nothing useful. Then Nettlewing climbed onto the table, pushed a silver button toward her, and blinked. Leora started crying without making a sound. Serena did not press her. She poured water and told Leora that fear was not guilt. Fear was often what powerful people left behind when they could not leave fingerprints. Leora looked at the torn mark on Serena's throat. Then she pulled a folded seating slip from the hidden seam of her apron. Morel's steward had written the placement order himself. The lower cup had not been a mistake. It had been staged. Eloin took the slip with careful hands. Serena thanked Leora by name. That mattered. No one had said the girl's name in that room before. Leora's shoulders loosened by 1 inch. It was not courage yet. It was the place courage could grow. On the 3rd evening, Nettlewing escaped the chamber with Arvitha's signet glove. Serena found him in the corridor, dragging the glove backward like a conquered animal. Arvith stood 10 paces away in a black shirt, coat absent, one wrist bare where the glove had been stolen. His hair was less controlled than usual. That detail should not have mattered. It did. Nettlewing dropped the glove at Serena's feet and sat on it. Serena told him it belonged to the king. Nettlewing blinked. Arvith said the dragon knew. Serena bent to retrieve it. Nettlewing placed both front claws on the glove and hissed. He wanted payment. Arvith removed a small silver button from his cuff and placed it on the floor. Nettlewing picked it up, considered the weight, and allowed Serena to take the glove. When she stood, Arvith was closer than before. She held out the glove. His fingers closed around it without touching hers. That should have ended the moment. It did not. The corridor was narrow. The firelight from the wall sconces drew gold across one side of his face and left the other in shadow. Serena could smell cold air, leather, smoke, and the faint iron scent of royal oath magic. He was not beautiful in Carrick's bright, easy way. Arvith was built from restraint, command, and the kind of silence that made weaker men confess. Serena remembered Morel's words. He watched her as if self-control were a religion. Her pulse moved too quickly. Arvith saw it. Of course he saw it. His eyes dropped once to her throat, where the damaged bond mark still darkened under the skin. Then he stepped back. He told her to lock in her dragon before the treasury fell. Nettlewing made a delighted sound. Serena should have felt relieved by the distance. Instead, she felt the absence of him like cold air across wet skin. The next day, rumor reached them in sharper form. Morel had told the court that Serena had turned toward the king before she ever struck Carrick. Carrick did not name the accusation directly. He spoke of influence, confusion, and a wife whose temper had found a new royal shadow. The words were careful. That made them worse. Arvith had to respond in public. In the eastern legal corridor before clerks, priests, and 3 Ostra cousins, he passed Serena without stopping. He called her Lady Vale. Not Serena. Not my lady. Just the lawful distance required by trial etiquette. He did not slow when Nettlewing hissed from her shoulder. He did not look at her long enough for gossip to feed. Serena stood still until he vanished around the marble arch. The old pain moved in her chest before she could stop it. Cold King. Cold stare. A woman could learn the wrong lesson twice if humiliation trained her well. That night, he came to her door and did not enter. The chamber would have allowed him if she opened it. He remained outside the threshold, one hand resting on the ironwood frame. Serena opened the door halfway and asked if he had regretted helping her. Arvitha's hand tightened around the frame. He said no. She asked if he had remembered she was inconvenient. His eyes darkened. He said she had always been inconvenient, but never in the way she meant. The air between them changed. Serena stepped closer, angry enough to forget caution. He did not retreat. He also did not cross the threshold. She asked why he had cut her cold before witnesses. Arvith answered that if he gave Carrick one glance to use, her evidence would be dragged into his desire. He had looked at her once too long at dinner years ago, and Carrick had watched for months afterward. Serena's anger shifted under that confession. His hand remained on the doorframe. His knuckles had gone pale. He wanted to reach for her. That much was no longer hidden. Serena asked if he would always choose the law over her. Arvith leaned closer, stopping just short of the threshold. He said he chose the law because it was the only shield he could hold in public without turning her into a scandal. In private, he was choosing not to touch her because she had not asked. Serena's breath caught. Nettlewing waited 3 full heartbeats before climbing up the doorframe and biting Arvitha's sleeve. The dragon had learned better timing. Arvith looked at him. Serena said Nettlewing objected to speeches longer than mercy. Arvith said he would shorten them. He did not leave until Serena closed the door herself. That night, Carrick struck back through the bond. Serena woke to pain. The crown bond mark at her throat burned so suddenly that she could not draw breath. She rolled from the bed and hit the floor on her hands and knees. Nettlewing woke with a shriek. The room tilted. The old bond pulled at her from far away, not with love, but with ownership. Carrick was performing a scent ritual with Morel. Because Serena was still legally bound to him, the ritual tore through the old oath and sent pain through the mark at her throat. Nettlewing flew at the door. Serena tried to call him back. No sound came. Green flame burst across the seam. The chamber door did not open, but smoke poured into the hall. Nettlewing squeezed through the upper vent with furious determination. Arvith arrived minutes later under his scent seal. He entered without guards, coat half-fastened, hair loose from sleep. He saw her on the floor. Every part of him changed without moving. The room seemed to narrow around his control. He crossed to her, then stopped. His hand hovered near her shoulder. Serena laughed once, sharp with pain, and asked if he was afraid she was contagious. He said no. She told him not to look at her, as if she were already ruined. Arvith answered that he was looking at the mark. If he touched her while royal desire was active in the bond, it might feed the curse. Serena shut her eyes. More rules. More royal line. More ways for her body to belong to law before herself. The pain pulsed again. She gripped the edge of the bed frame until her fingers cramped. Arvith knelt in front of her, close enough that she felt his body heat. He could call Aloan. He could call a healer. He could leave. Serena opened her eyes. Leave. He actually meant it. He would leave her shaking on the floor if she chose that over his nearness. Something in her chest twisted. She told him to stay. The word was not surrender. It was choice. Arvith bowed his head once. He stayed. Nettlewing perched on his shoulder, smoking with rage. The dragon had dragged him there, and now seemed prepared to supervise the distance between them. Arvith removed his black signet and pressed its inner edge into his palm until Oath Light answered. Serena jolted and asked what he was doing. He said he was giving the curse royal oath without giving it royal claim. He pressed his oath-marked palm to the floor beside the bond mark's shadow. Oath Light spread in a dark silver ring. The pain in Serena's throat eased by a fraction. He had found a way to help without touching her. That nearly broke her harder than the pain. Carrick would have held her afterward if someone watched. He would have kissed her forehead in public and called himself tragic. Arvith knelt in the dark, giving oath to a cursed circle, refusing the comfort of her gratitude. Serena swallowed through the burn and asked why he had looked at her for years like he hated her. The question had no place in a crisis. It came anyway. Arvitha's gaze lifted. For once, he did not look away fast enough. He said looking at her had been the problem. She was his brother's wife. He had no right to wonder whether she laughed when no one hurt her. He had no right to notice when she stopped wearing blue because Carrick had praised it on Morel. He had no right to want to remove her from rooms where Carrick made her smaller. Serena forgot the pain for half a breath. Arvith looked down at his marked palm and said a man did not become honorable because he wanted something forbidden and stayed silent. Silence was only the first duty. He had kept distance because he could not trust his wanting to remain clean if he stood too near. Her eyes burned. Not from the curse. Nettlewing leaned forward and bit the silver clasp at Arvatha's collar. The king closed his eyes. The dragon yanked until the clasp came loose, then dropped it into Serena's lap like a legal penalty. Serena laughed and cried in the same breath. Arvath looked at the broken clasp, then at Nettlewing. He said the dragon had strong opinions. Serena said he hated cowards. Arvath answered that this seemed fair. The pain faded before dawn. Arvath left only after Eloin arrived. He did not touch Serena once. That became the most dangerous thing about him. The next morning, Serena asked him to examine the edge of the bond mark. Eloin had gone to retrieve a duplicate seal record. The chamber was quiet except for Nettlewing cracking stolen buttons under a paperweight. Arvath stood 3 paces away and did not move. Serena extended her hand first, then tilted her throat slightly, so the damaged mark showed above her collar. His eyes darkened with a restraint she now understood. He asked if she was certain. She said she was asking, not being taken. The words changed the room. Arvath stepped closer. His fingers rose slowly, giving her time to refuse at every inch. When they touched the edge of the mark, the contact was barely there. It still moved through Serena like a bell struck under water. His hand was warm. His thumb stopped before the pulse at her throat. She could feel the effort in that stop. Serena asked if she frightened him. He said no. Then he corrected himself. Her trust frightened him. Her permission frightened him more. The answer should have sounded absurd. It did not. She held his wrist for one breath, not to stop him, but to keep him there. His eyes dropped to her hand on him. Neither of them moved. Nettlewing waited long enough for the silence to turn dangerous. Then he coughed smoke directly at Arvatha's boots. Serena released him and said her examiner disapproved. Arvath looked at the dragon and said the examiner had terrible discretion. Nettlewing stole the remaining silver clasp from his coat before he left. On the 5th day, Serena demanded entrance to the sealed witch archive. Eloin opposed it. The archive lay beneath the oldest part of the palace, where the betrayed witch's records had been locked under mirror vows. Only royal line authority could open the outer door, and only a wrong-bound spouse could read certain curse clauses. That meant Serena and Arvath had to enter together. Carrick had never taken her there. He had never wanted her to know the curse too well. Arvath did not argue. He sent away the guards and walked with her through the lower stair. Nettlewing rode on Serena's shoulder with a stolen sealing ribbon tied proudly around one horn. No one knew where he had found it. No one asked because the answer would probably require repayment. The witch archive door was a wall of black glass. A vow mirror stood before it. Eloin had warned them. The mirror showed false intent. It did not show lies as words. It showed the shape of desire beneath them. Serena stepped before it first. Her reflection appeared pale, bruised under the throat, hair loosely bound, eyes colder than she remembered. Behind the reflected Serena stood 2 shadows. One was Carrick as a boy, holding out the bronze clasp. The other was Carrick as a man, standing beside Morel with Serena's cup in his hand. The boy faded. The man remained. Serena exhaled. Then Arvath stepped beside her. The mirror changed. It showed him standing behind her. Not touching. His hand hovered near her waist in the reflection, fingers curved with restraint. Around him moved other versions of the same moment. In one, he pulled her against him. In another, he bent his head toward the damaged mark at her throat. In another, he stood between her and every door in the kingdom. Each reflected version stopped before taking. Serena could not breathe properly. Arvath stared at the mirror as if it had betrayed him. He said he had warned her that he was not clean because he wanted nothing. Serena turned toward him. The space between them felt smaller than the archive stair, smaller than law, smaller than breath. She said the mirror did not show absence. It showed that he stopped. His jaw tightened. He said that was not sainthood. Serena answered that she had not asked for a saint. The mirror pulsed. The black glass door opened. They entered the archive together. Inside, shelves curved around a circular chamber carved beneath the palace roots, which script glowed faintly along the walls. Old scent jars rested behind silver mesh. Bound ledgers lay under dragonone weights. The air smelled of paper, cold ash, and secrets preserved too long. Serena found the clause after an hour of searching. The witch's original curse had been copied into royal law, but the last lines had been softened in later translations. Serena read the older version aloud while Arvith stood behind her. The curse punished not lost recognition, but selfish recognition. A royal man might become confused after adulthood. He might doubt his heart. He might mistake hunger for love or duty for prison. But if he remembered enough to know that someone loved him honestly, and still used confusion to take comfort without sacrifice, the mark beneath his royal signet would blacken by choice. Serena touched the page. There it was. Carrick had not fallen helplessly. He had chosen downward. A crack sounded overhead. Arvith moved instantly. He caught Serena around the waist and pulled her back as a shelf shuddered loose. Glass jars broke across the stones where she had stood. Bitter yellow vapor rose from one shattered vial. Nettlewing shrieked and blasted green fire into the vapor, burning it clean before it reached Serena's face. Arvith's arm was locked around her. Serena's back pressed against his chest. His breath moved near her temple. His body had gone rigid with the effort of holding still now that danger had passed. His hand was at her waist, firm enough to protect, careful enough not to claim. He did not release her at once because falling glass still slid from the shelf. She did not ask him to. For 3 breaths, the archive held them in that dangerous pause. When he finally loosened his arm, Serena turned in it. He released her immediately, but she caught his injured hand before he could hide it. A shard had cut through his glove. She wrapped a clean strip from her sleeve around his palm. Her fingers brushed his skin. His eyes closed for one brief second. When they opened, the desire in them was controlled but no longer hidden. Serena told him he should not look at her that way. He said he knew. She said it was not an order. The words surprised them both. Nettlewing landed between their boots, carrying a half-burned sabotage charm in his mouth. He dropped it with a smug chirp. The charm bore the Ostra-resin seal. Morel had tried to bury the claws before trial. That mistake gave Serena another proof layer. Eloan returned that evening with the duplicate seal record. The palace scent keeper had signed 2 reports on Carrick's mark. One public report said the mark was stable. The sealed duplicate admitted discoloration under the signet. Eloan had found his private mark on both. Arvith offered him one narrow mercy, truth in court or full punishment for false sealing. That gave the scent keeper a reason to speak. It also gave Serena a witness who feared the law more than Carrick. The 6th day brought rumors with sharper teeth. Morel had told the court that Serena seduced the king after failing to hold Carrick. Carrick, threatened by the idea that his brother might want the woman he had discarded, changed from lazy cruelty to active malice. His jealousy exposed him. He petitioned to declare Serena bond faithless, dragon dangerous, and unfit to retain noble name. Arvith could have crushed the petition by royal command. Serena refused. If he saved her by force, the court would call her his hidden prize. She chose trial because she wanted her name restored in public. Still, choice did not make fear vanish. That night, she unfolded the northern papers and traced the Frostgate route with one finger. The road looked simple on parchment. Roads always did before feet touched them. Nettlewing watched from the evidence box. Then he dragged the trial ledger to one side and the northern map to the other. He placed one stolen button on each. Serena stared at him. The dragon looked back as if saying both exits were real. That was the cruelty and mercy of choice. She could leave. She could stay. Neither path was a cage unless someone else chose it for her. Arvith entered after she called permission. He saw the map open and did not hide the cost of seeing it. That mattered more than if he had hidden it perfectly. Serena asked if he thought she would lose. He said he thought court truth was not the same as truth. She asked why gather evidence then. He said to give her a chance. A week earlier, that answer would have angered her. Now it steadied her. He did not promise victory, because promises could become another chain. He offered chance, work, and exit. Serena picked up the broken pledge chain. She told him she was going to trial. For her name. For her property. For Nettlewing's life. For every woman who had been told a man's curse mattered more than her pain. Arvith bowed his head, not as king to subject, but as witness. She asked if he would stand behind her. He said he would. She asked if he would refrain from touching her if she ordered it. He said he would. She asked if she told him to look at her. His gaze darkened. He said that would be harder. Her breath caught. Nettlewing opened one eye, saw the distance between them, and made a warning sound. Serena laughed under her breath. Arvith looked at the dragon and said he objected to timing. Serena answered that he objected to weakness. For a moment, the trial, the curse, and the court waited outside the room. The 7th night came under a full white moon. The Crown Amphitheater opened to the city. It was older than the palace and far crueler. Stone seats rose in wide rings beneath the open sky. At the center stood the trial floor, marked with 3 circles: crown, scent, and oath. Royal disputes were judged there, because the old witch had demanded that royal love never hide entirely indoors. Serena entered through the eastern gate. The court fell into a low roar. She wore dark green, not mourning black and not bridal white. The torn bond mark at her throat was uncovered. The broken pledge chain hung from her wrist. The bronze dragon scale clasp sat at its center, not as memory, but as evidence of the boy Carrick had used against her. Nettlewing perched on her shoulder, wearing nothing but his own fury. He had rejected 3 ceremonial collars, 1 ribbon, and a tiny legal sash Aloan had tried to tie around him. Arvith walked behind Serena, not beside her. That choice cut through the court's rumor before the trial began. If he had walked beside her, they would have seen possession. If he had walked ahead, they would have seen rescue. Behind her, he was power restrained by her pace. Carrick entered through the royal gate. He looked beautiful, pale, and injured. The red mark from the chain had faded into a faint line on his cheek. He had left it visible. Of course he had. A visible injury served his story. Morel entered in white gold silk with a veil soft enough to suggest suffering. Her gown had new embroidery over the hem. Serena wondered how many charms were hidden under it. The first witness was Carrick. He stood in the crown circle and spoke with perfect sorrow. He described confusion under the curse. He described Serena's jealousy. He described Nettlewing's outburst. He described his heartbreak at being struck by the woman he had tried to protect from his own damaged heart. Serena listened. Each sentence had a smooth surface and a rotten center. The court murmured with sympathy. Many wanted to pity him. Pity for royal men was one of Varathorn's oldest habits. Then Morel took the scent circle. She trembled at the correct moments. She spoke of fear. She spoke of Serena's rage. She claimed she had never sought position, only comforted a cursed man abandoned by a bitter wife. Nettlewing made a choking noise. The presiding scent keeper warned Serena to control her dragon. Serena touched Nettlewing's tail and told him not yet. The dragon's scales vibrated with legal disappointment. Then Carrick shifted his attack. He said Arvith had always watched Serena too closely. He said a lonely wife might mistake a king's attention for rescue. He said his brother's shadow had entered his marriage before Morel ever did. The amphitheater moved as if a cold wind had crossed it. This was the accusation Arvith had feared for years. For 1 second, the air around the king changed. Every noble felt it. Arvith did not step forward. He did not defend himself. He pressed the reaction down so hard that stillness became its own violence. Serena turned back to Carrick before anyone else could speak. She said the king had given her a locked door, legal papers, and a road out of the kingdom. Not a bed. Not a crown. Not a chain. The words struck harder because she spoke them herself. Carrick's face tightened. He had wanted her to deny desire. Instead, she denied ownership. That was worse for him. Serena stepped into the oath circle. The amphitheater quieted. She did not begin with love. That was important. She began with law. She called Leora, the young cupbearer who had placed the lower cup under orders from Morel's steward. Leora shook it first, then held up the seating slip she had hidden in her apron. Serena thanked her by name before the court. The girl straightened when the court heard it. Serena also presented witness statements from servants who had seen Morel wear Serena's binding pattern by design. These details did not prove the larger crime, but they established public humiliation. Then Serena held up the scorched charm piece from Morel's hair. Nettlewing leaned forward, eyes bright. The scent keeper examined it under moon flame. Bitter yellow vapor rose. He identified curse resin. Morel lifted her veil and claimed many noble houses used resin in protective rites. Serena expected the answer. She opened the ledger. The resin had been blended with false mate scent and delivered to Carrick's private account through the Ostra family storehouse. The amphitheater shifted. Morel's mouth tightened. Carrick looked at Serena for the first time without performance. There he was, the man behind the curse. Serena turned the page. The restoration draft logs proved Carrick had received memory recovery treatments 4 months before the anniversary feast. Carrick's advocate rose and said recovery in fragments did not equal full recognition. Serena answered that it equaled enough recognition to stop using ignorance as a throne. The words passed through the court like a blade. The palace scent keeper took the stand next. He was old, narrow-shouldered, and frightened enough to sweat through his collar. Serena did not pity his fear. He had signed too many sealed reports. Under oath, he admitted that Carrick's curse mark had darkened months ago. He admitted that resin seals had been used before public appearances. He admitted that the mark was hidden beneath the royal signet, against the spirit of witch law. His motive was visible. Eloin had found his duplicate seal record. Truth had become safer than another lie. Carrick stepped forward and asked whether the court would punish a man for hiding a wound. Serena faced him. She said he had not hidden a wound. He had used it to make other people pay quietly. The court fell silent. Carrick's beautiful mask thinned. He reminded her that she had loved him once. Serena said yes. She had loved the boy who protected her. He had used him as an alibi. Morel moved then. She called the trial sentimental theater. She said an angry wife could not rewrite royal curse law. Serena turned toward her and answered that she did not need to. The witch who wrote it could. Eloin brought the archive copy forward. The presiding judge read the older clause beneath moon flame. His expression changed as he reached the final lines. The curse punished selfish recognition. Not confusion alone. Not desire alone. Choice after memory. The amphitheater understood slowly. Then all at once. Carrick's face went white. Morel gripped her veil. Serena looked at the scent keeper and requested Dragonfire verification under court supervision. The court erupted. Dragonfire against royal proof was rare. Dangerous. If the dragon burned falsely, the dragon could be confined. If the accused requested it without sufficient cause, she could lose standing immediately. Arvath moved one step. Then he stopped. Serena did not turn around. This had to be hers. The presiding judge reviewed the ledgers, the charm, the draft logs, the duplicate seal record, and the old witch clause. Once supervised Dragonfire revealed a royal mark, the presiding judges had no right to bury it. The old witch had written that clause above Crown appeal. Finally, the judge lifted his staff. Controlled Dragonfire was permitted. Nettlewing straightened. The little dragon looked as if every crime in history had led to this beautiful moment. Serena lifted him from her shoulder and set him inside the scent circle. She crouched before him and gave rules. Only the signet seal. No fingers. No eyebrows. No artistic interpretation. Nettlewing's eyes narrowed at the restrictions. Serena said please. At that, he pressed his warm snout briefly against her wrist. Then he turned toward Carrick. The prince hesitated. The court saw it. Arvatha's voice cut across the amphitheater for the first time. He ordered Carrick to give the signet. Carrick looked toward his brother. Something old and ugly moved between them. Jealousy. Fear. A lifetime of wanting Arvatha's authority without Arvatha's discipline. At last, Carrick removed the royal signet and placed it on the trial stone. Nettlewing inhaled. Green flame washed over the ring in a controlled ribbon. The resin seal melted first. It ran like yellow wax across black metal. Then the hidden mark beneath the signet appeared on the inner band, reflected in the moon basin for every witness to see. Black. Not gray. Not clouded. Black. The sound from the court was not a gasp. It was a verdict before the verdict. Carrick stepped back. He said it darkened because he suffered. The scent keeper shook his head. A suffering mark clouds. A selfish recognition mark blackens. Morel turned as if to leave. Nettlewing saw the movement. He sprang from the scent circle and landed at the edge of her gown. The presiding judge shouted. Serena grabbed for him too late. The dragon did not touch Morel. He bit the embroidered hem and breathed one tiny flame. Thread snapped. Hidden charms spilled across the stone floor. Resin beads. Scent knots. A private ostrich seal. A folded paper charm marked with Carrick's initials. The court rose in chaos. Morel's veil fell back. For the first time, her face showed no performance. Only rage. Serena picked up the folded paper charm with a cloth and handed it to the judge. The Ostra family patriarch stood from his seat, pale with calculation. He saw the private Ostra seal in the judge's hand and chose the mines over the daughter who had risked them. He signaled to his steward. Support withdrew in public. That abandonment hurt Morel more than any flame could have. Carrick saw it too. The web he had trusted was burning from every side. Serena faced the court and asked release from the crown bond, restoration of property, protection of her dragon, and public record of fraud. Her voice held. Her whole body held. No one could call her the silent wife now. The judges withdrew beneath the moon arch. The court waited in restless waves. Carrick tried once to approach Serena. Arvath did not move, but the air changed around him. Carrick stopped. Morel stood alone while her family conferred without looking at her. Nettlewing dragged one of her fallen scent charms to Serena's feet and sat on it. The judges returned before midnight. The verdict came in layers. Serena Vale was released from the Crown bond with full dignity restored. Her dowry property, household funds, and personal name were returned free of Carrick's claim. Nettlewing was recognized as a lawful scent witness dragon under Crown protection. The record would state that Serena's strike occurred after provocation and before false evidence could be destroyed. She would pay a symbolic fine to the old Crown law, not a criminal penalty. Morel Ostra lost her petition for royal recognition. Her dowry claim collapsed. Her access to court was revoked pending further inquiry into resin fraud. Her family's mining privileges would be reviewed by the Crown. Carrick lost unrestricted royal stipend, succession ceremonial rights, and authority over any bound household. He was ordered into Truthvow pilgrimage for 3 years without resin, court favorite, private physician, or court luxury. If he failed, the removal would become permanent. The sentence did not destroy his body. It destroyed his comfort. For Carrick, that was the sharper punishment. The amphitheater watched him receive it. The court that once pitted him now saw the shape of his cowardice. He had wanted forgiveness without truth, desire without cost, status without sacrifice. The curse had not made him do that. It had revealed him. When the trial ended, Serena expected relief to feel clean. It did not. It felt heavy, aching, and bright. She stood beneath the moon with Nettlewing on her shoulder and the broken pledge chain in her hand. Carrick was led away through the lower gate. Morel followed her family without their arms offered to her. The court whispered Serena's name in a new tone. Not pity. Not yet respect. Something close to caution. Arvith approached only after the judges left. He stopped at a proper distance and said she had survived in public. Serena looked at the empty trial floor. She closed her hand around the broken chain until the metal pressed into her palm. She asked what happened now. Arvith said whatever she chose. The answer should not have hurt. It did because she believed him. They returned to the Thorn Vault wing before dawn. No hidden passage this time. The court saw them walk through the palace, with Arvith behind her again and Nettlewing glaring at anyone who stared too long. In the chamber, the travel purse still sat on the table. The northern passage seal remained unbroken. The moment nearly broke in a different way. Serena's body had held through humiliation, flight, pain, study, rumor, and trial. Now, in the quiet, her strength loosened. She swayed once. Arvith caught her by the elbows before she reached the table. His hands were steady. His face was not. Serena did not pull away. For one suspended breath, they stood close enough that his forehead could have touched hers if he bent. She thought he might kiss her. He looked as if he wanted to. Then he released her and stepped back. Not because he wanted less. Because he wanted too much. He picked up the travel papers and placed them between them like a blade wrapped in mercy. He told her the carriage could leave at sunrise. The Frostgate Road was clear. Her name was restored, so she no longer needed false papers unless she preferred them. The gold was hers either way. Serena turned slowly. He was still offering freedom. Arvith corrected the word. Escape had been last night's word. Freedom was this morning's. Nettlewing climbed onto the table and sniffed the papers. Serena touched the seal. She asked if he would let her go even now. Arvith said yes. Especially now. She searched his face for the hidden condition. The delayed claim. The royal bargain. The sentence that would make this another cage with better manners. None came. Arvith continued in a lower voice. He had wanted her before he had any right to speak of wanting. He had protected what he could without letting desire become law. If he asked for anything before she stood alone, then he would be only another royal man dressing hunger as fate. The old witch mark carved above the hearth stirred. Serena saw it because the room darkened for one breath. A thin line of silver light moved through the black carving. Arvith saw it too. He did not look away from her. Serena said this was where the curse tested him. He answered that it had been testing him for years. The words entered her slowly. Carrick had claimed the curse as a prison. Arvith had treated it as a warning. Serena picked up the travel papers. Her name appeared on one set. A new name appeared on another. Gold waited. Route maps waited. Instructions waited. He had built an exit carefully enough that she could use it without him. She could leave. She could take Nettlewing through the Frostgate Road and begin again in a northern city where no one had watched her stand below Morel's stolen cup. She could become a court ghost with restored money and no royal men at her door. For the first time in years, leaving was real. That made staying real too. Serena broke the northern seal. Arvid went still. She unfolded the route paper, read every line, and placed it back on the table. Then she pushed it toward him. She said she was not staying because she had nowhere to go. Arvid said he knew. She told him he did not get to make her queen because he felt guilty. His mouth almost moved. He said he would not survive the attempt. Nettlewing chirped agreement. Serena stepped closer. She wanted a position first. Public. Legal. Hers. She wanted authority over crown bonds, false scent claims, and cursed petitions. She wanted no woman after her standing in a lower cup position while the court called it patience. Arvid bowed his head and named the office before she could. Crown Advocate of Bond Law. He had already thought of it. Before the trial. Before she chose. Especially before she chose. The last piece of fear inside her loosened. Serena set the broken pledge chain on the table. Then she removed the bronze dragon scale clasp from its center. For 7 years, it had meant Carrick as he was. Then Carrick as she hoped. Then Carrick as a wound. Now it was only bronze. She placed it beside the old travel papers. She said she was done being loyal to a memory. Arvid did not move toward her. That was the final proof. Serena crossed the remaining distance herself. She stopped close enough to see the silver in his eyes change with his breathing. Close enough that Nettlewing from the table raised his head in strict supervision. Serena said she was not ready to be claimed. Arvid said he was not asking. She said she was not ready to be touched in ways that made her body feel like law. His face tightened with controlled pain. He said he would wait outside every law. Serena said she was ready to be courted. The words warmed as she said them. Arvid asked, by him? Serena let herself smile. By him, if he remembered that Nettlewing judged all gifts. The dragon puffed smoke from the table. Arvid lowered his head and said he would bring bribes. Buttons were acceptable. Silver if he was careful. Gold if he made a serious mistake. For the first time, Arvid smiled fully. It changed his face so much that Serena's breath caught. He noticed. He always noticed. This time, he did not look away. The witch mark above the hearth flared silver, then faded into clean stone. The curse did not break because a woman chose a king. It broke because a king offered love and left the door open. The first ceremony of Serena's new office took place 10 days later in the glass hall. Leora stood among the junior clerks now, no longer hidden behind a tray, and Serena gave her the first public nod before the oath began. The same hall looked different when Serena entered through the central doors. No lower cup waited for her. No copied gown mocked her from the dais. No prince stood above her explaining cruelty as illness. The nobles watched carefully as she crossed the floor in deep green court robes marked with the silver emblem of Crown Bond Law. Arvid stood at the throne, not smiling, not reaching, looking, openly now. Serena took her oath before the moon basin. She swore to review bond disputes, scent claims, curse petitions, and household rights under crown protection. She swore no bound spouse would lose name, property, or creature rights without public hearing. She swore royal line privilege would no longer hide selfishness behind inherited pain. The court heard every word. So did Carrick. He stood near the lower gate in plain travel gray, guarded but not chained. His pilgrimage began at noon. Without pearls, court silk, resin seals, or adoring witnesses, he looked younger. Not innocent. Just reduced. Serena did not hate him in that moment. Hatred would have kept him central. She had better uses for herself now. Morel did not attend. Her family had sent apology gifts that Serena refused in writing. Nettlewing had burned one ribbon before the messenger left, which made the refusal easier to understand. After Serena's oath, Aloan presented a tiny green enamel collar on a velvet tray. The office recognized Nettlewing Vale as Royal Scent Examiner under Crown Advocate protection. The court stared. Nettlewing stared harder. Serena lifted the collar. It was absurdly small, beautifully made, and decorated with one silver button at the throat. Nettlewing allowed her to fasten it. Then he immediately leapt from the dais. A noblewoman gasped. A guard reached for him and thought better of it. Nettlewing raced across the glass hall, vanished behind a ceremonial screen, and returned dragging Carrick's abandoned anniversary cushion in his teeth. The cushion was white silk embroidered with the old prince's crest. It had once sat on the dais beside Serena's missing cup. Nettlewing dragged it all the way to Serena's feet. Then he turned 3 times, curled on top of it, and closed his eyes. The court held its breath. Someone laughed. Then someone else. The laughter spread, uneasy at first, then bright. Even Aloan covered her mouth. Serena looked down at the little dragon sleeping on the symbol of her humiliation. For once, the memory did not hurt. It had been stolen, burned, judged, and returned as bedding for a smug green menace. Arvith descended from the throne. He stopped beside Serena, leaving a careful space between them because the court was watching and because he still respected the difference between public claim and private choice. He said her examiner had strong instincts. Serena said he preferred practical justice. She told Arvith she would walk in the West Garden after court. His eyes warmed. He asked permission to walk in the same direction. Serena said he could request it. He asked what happened if her examiner objected. She said Nettlewing accepted buttons. Arvith said he had brought 3. Serena smiled before she could stop herself. Nettlewing opened one eye, as if confirming payment terms. Arvith looked from the dragon to Serena. For years, he had looked away. Now he remained. Serena had once mistaken distance for contempt, patience for love, and memory for duty. She had stood beneath a stolen cup and called endurance a virtue, because she had not yet learned that love without honesty was only another form of hunger. Carrick had loved being forgiven. Morel had loved being envied. The court had loved a convenient curse. Arvith had loved her enough to let her leave. That was why she could stay. Not as a discarded wife. Not as a rescued woman. Not as a prize moved from one royal brother to another. As Serena Vale, crown advocate, dragon keeper, witness to her own life. The moon basin caught the morning light and scattered it across the glass hall. Silver flashed over the floor, over the oath circle, over the empty lower step where her cup had once been placed. Serena stepped past that place without slowing. Beside her, Nettlewing dragged the royal cushion by one corner, refusing to leave his new bed behind. Behind her, King Arvith followed at the pace she set. And this time, when Serena turned to look at him, he did not look away. If this story held you until the end, subscribe and tell me where you are listening from today.